Okay, buckle up. Elvis Presley's hair wasn't just hair. It was a statement, a phenomenon. And guess what? His natural hair color wasn't jet black. He actually started dyeing it early on, sometimes even using black shoe polish for touch-ups in the very beginning. That iconic black mane required serious upkeep, involving specific pomades, dyes, and later a dedicated stylist. And remember those famous sideburns? They weren't always universally loved. He was even asked to shave them off for certain appearances. Plus, the day he got his GI buzzcut for the Army was practically an international news event, dubbed the haircut heard round the world. Maintaining that perfect look, especially in the later years, took considerable time and effort, becoming a key part of his legendary stage persona. Number 6. The greased lightning that started it all. OMG. Let's talk about the look that basically screamed REBEL. We're throwing it back to the mid-1950s. Think Son records Elvis. Early RCA Elvis, the guy who gyrated onto the Ed Sullivan Show and made parents clutch their pearls. This hairstyle was pure rockabilly fire. It was defined by that sky-high pompadour in the front slicked back sides that shone like polished chrome, and the signature, ducktail, or D.A., duck's ass, sculpted meticulously at the back. This wasn't a wash-and-go situation, people. This required commitment. We're talking serious amounts of hair product. Pomade was the magic ingredient. Brands like Royal Crown hair dressing and black and white pomade were reportedly in his arsenal. He'd comb it through generously to get that wet, high shine look, and the hold needed to keep every strand perfectly in place, defying gravity and convention. Remember, Elvis's natural hair was a sandy brown, maybe a dirty blonde. He started dyeing it black pretty early, using commercial dyes like Miss Clairol, 51D, black velvet. This dramatic, almost blue-black color contrasted sharply with his fair skin, making the hairstyle even more striking and intense. It wasn't just a color choice. It was part of crafting the Elvis persona. The style itself was complex. The top was left long, combed forward, and then rolled back on itself to create that impressive front wave, the pompadour. The sides were combed straight back, hugging the scalp. The back was the masterpiece. Hair from both sides combed towards the center, meeting in a V-shape that resembled, well, a duck's tail. It took time, patience, and a whole lot of combing. This wasn't just messy rebellion. It was sculpted rebellion. This hairstyle wasn't invented by Elvis. It had roots in earlier styles and was popular among truckers and the rockabilly subculture. But he took it mainstream. He made it iconic. It perfectly matched his music, a blend of country blues and R&B that felt dangerous and exciting. The hair moved with him, mostly staying put thanks to the grease, but maybe a stray strand would fall across his forehead during a particularly energetic performance, driving crowds absolutely wild. It was suggestive, it was bold, it was unlike anything the buttoned-up mainstream had seen on such a massive scale. News reports and critics at the time often commented on the hair, sometimes disapprovingly calling it vulgar or outlandish, which only added to its cool factor for his young fans. It was the visual representation of rock and roll's arrival. He used multiple combs, legend has it, to get the details just right. Maintaining it meant constant touch-ups, carrying a comb everywhere, and reapplying pomade. It was high maintenance, high impact, and absolutely unforgettable. This was the hair that launched 1,000 imitators and defined the look of a generation's rebellion. Number 5. When the king lost his crown, literally. Picture this. March 1958. Elvis Presley, the biggest star on the planet, the guy whose hair was almost as famous as his voice, reports for duty with the U.S. Army. And the Army had rules, strict rules, including rules about hair. What happened next became one of the most talked about haircuts in history. At Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, in front of a swarm of reporters and photographers, Elvis Presley got a regulation GI buzzcut. Gone was the pompadour. Gone was the ducktail. Gone was the... The event was massive news, globally. Newspapers ran headlines like, "That King gets clipped," or "Elvis loses his locks." Photos of Sergeant Presley looking almost unrecognizable with his short, bristly hair were everywhere. It was a visual shock. The hair that symbolized youthful rebellion and rock and roll freedom was replaced by the ultimate symbol of conformity and military discipline. Army barber James Peterson was the man who wielded the clippers, instantly becoming a footnote in pop culture history. He reportedly gathered up the fallen locks, though what ultimately happened to them is the stuff of legend. For many fans, it was traumatic. The hair was such an integral part of the Elvis image, the Elvis magic. Seeing it gone felt like a piece of him was missing. It marked a clear end to the first explosive phase of his career. He would spend the next 2 years largely out of the public eye, serving in Germany. But the haircut itself became an event demonstrating his willingness or obligation to serve his country just like any other young man despite his superstardom. It humanized him for some, while temporarily stripping him of his iconic rock god image for others. The GI cut was as basic as it gets. Short all over, following the contours of the head. No styling required, no pomade needed. It was the absolute antithesis of his previous look. While serving photos would show him in uniform, his hair gradually growing out a bit, but always kept within military standards. It was a period where his image shifted from rebellious rocker to clean-cut soldier. This drastic change, forced by circumstance, remains a distinct and memorable chapter in the Elvis-style evolution. It proved that even without the famous hair, the public's fascination with Elvis Presley remained intense. The buzzcut wasn't a style choice, it was a service requirement, but it became an iconic image nonetheless, representing a unique moment in his life and career. Number 4. Smoother, swaver, and ready for his close-up. After the Army, Elvis came marching home in 1960. Not just to music, but to Hollywood. And his hair entered a new phase, reflecting his transition into a bankable movie star. Goodbye. Extreme rockabilly grease. Hello, smoother, more controlled, leading man locks. This was the era of movies like GI Blues, where you can literally see his hair growing back post-Army, Blue Hawaii, Viva Las Vegas, and dozens more. The hair had to work for the camera and fit the often light-hearted romantic roles he was playing. The jet black color remained a non-negotiable staple. He continued dyeing it, maintaining that dramatic contrast. But the style softened. While still recognizably Elvis, the towering pompadour often gave way to a fuller, more rounded look on top. Think less sharp angles, more gentle waves, or a controlled poof. The sides were still neat, but perhaps not slicked back with the same intensity or heavy reliance on greasy pomade. Hairspray likely became a bigger player here, offering hold without the wet look. It looked softer, more touchable, perfect for those Hollywood close-ups with leading ladies like Anne Margaret. The ducktail at the back became less pronounced or disappeared altogether, replaced by a more conventional, neatly tapered neckline. The sideburns were still there, a signature Elvis element, but they might have varied slightly in length depending on the movie or the specific year within the decade. They weren't yet the dramatic facial furniture they'd become later. This hairstyle was versatile enough to look appropriate, whether he was playing a soldier, a race car driver, a fisherman, or a singing tour guide. It was still meticulously maintained. Don't get it twisted. This wasn't effortless bedhead. It required regular dyeing, precise cutting, and daily styling. But the overall effect was less overtly rebellious and more polished, mainstream, handsome. It projected charisma and movie star quality rather than raw teenage angst. This look dominated most of the 1960s, for Elvis providing a consistent visual identity during his prolific, if sometimes critically panned, movie career. It was less about shocking the establishment and more about looking good on screen. Think of it as the Hollywood-approved version of Elvis's hair, still dark, still full, still undeniably Elvis, but refined for a different stage. It was neat, tidy, and camera-ready at all times, the dependable hairstyle of Elvis, the movie star. Number 3. The '68 Comeback Special Edge. Okay, fast forward to 1968. Elvis had been lost in a loop of mediocre movies and soundtracks for years. Then came the NBC television special, simply titled Elvis, now universally known as the '68 Comeback Special and BAM. He wasn't just back, he was reborn. And his hair? It was pure, untamed rock and roll energy translated into follicles. This wasn't the smooth Hollywood look, nor was it the '50s pompadour. This was something new, something raw, something electrifying. Dressed head to toe in iconic black leather for the informal jam sessions, his hair was equally dark, equally intense. It was longer than his movie-era hair, fuller, and definitely more textured. Gone was the perfect sprayed-in-place neatness. This hair looked alive, almost dangerous. It fell across his forehead as he sweated and poured his soul back into the music that made him famous. The jet black color seemed deeper, more saturated than ever, contrasting dramatically with the stage lights and his intense gaze. The sideburns made a major statement here. They were longer, thicker, and more prominent than they'd been in years, extending further down his cheeks. They framed his face, adding to the slightly brooding, powerful look. This wasn't just hair, it was part of the whole primal vibe of the performance. It looked less sculpted and more deliberately styled to appear a bit wilder, a bit less constrained. You could see individual strands, movement, a departure from the more helmet-like style sometimes seen in the early 60s. This look was reportedly influenced by his stylist, Larry Geller, who had been working with him for a few years and encouraged a more contemporary, slightly counterculture-influenced style. It was a conscious decision to shed the wholesome movie image and reclaim his title as the king of rock and roll. The hair perfectly complemented the raw energy of the performances, especially the stand-up segments where he prowled the stage. It looked modern for 1968, tapping into the vibe of the era while still being uniquely Elvis. This hairstyle signaled his triumphant return to live performance and to relevant music. It was bold, confident, and undeniably cool. It wiped away the memory of pineapple-themed movie plots and reminded everyone of the magnetic performer underneath. The '68 comeback special hair wasn't just a haircut. It was a statement of intent. It said Elvis was back. He was still the king, and he was ready to rock harder than ever. It became instantly iconic, forever associated with one of the greatest comeback moments in music history. Number 2. The Vegas jumpsuit glory. Enter the 1970s. Elvis conquered Las Vegas, trading movie sets for sold-out showrooms at the International Hotel, later the Las Vegas Hilton. This era brought us the legendary jumpsuits, studded, caped, and flared, and a hairstyle that matched their extravagance. Big hair, big sideburns, big Vegas energy. This is the look many people picture when they think of peak 70s Elvis. The hair got even longer and fuller than the '68 style. It was thick, luxuriant, and styled with significant volume, especially on top and at the sides. The jet black dye job remained essential, creating a dense, almost helmet-like appearance at times, likely held firmly in place with copious amounts of hairspray to withstand the energetic stage performances and karate moves. It needed to look perfect from every angle, under bright stage lights for thousands of fans, and the sideburns, oh the sideburns. They became one of his most defining features during this period. They grew longer and thicker, often extending well below the earlobe, sometimes flaring out slightly towards the cheek. They were meticulously shaped dramatic points of facial architecture that screamed Elvis. They perfectly balanced the volume of the hair on top and the flamboyant collars of his jumpsuits. This was arguably his most high-maintenance hairstyle. Stylist Larry Geller was crucial during this time, responsible for dyeing, cutting, and styling Elvis's hair, often daily when he was performing or touring. Maintaining the intense black color required frequent touch-ups. The sheer amount of hair demanded expert styling to achieve the consistent look he presented night after night. He was sculpted, polished, and projected an image of ultimate showmanship and larger-than-life stardom. A prime example of this look is immortalized in the Aloha from Hawaii via satellite concert broadcast in 1973. Watched by over 1 billion people worldwide, Elvis, in his white American Eagle jumpsuit, sported this magnificent full, perfectly coiffed black hair and prominent sideburns. It was the image of Elvis Presley beamed across the globe. The king in his imperial phase. The hair was as much a part of the costume and the spectacle as the jumpsuit itself. It was regal, powerful, and became synonymous with his reign as the ultimate Las Vegas performer. It was consistent, it was iconic, and it was pure Elvis Presley in the 70s. Number 1. The final act: volume and intensity. As Elvis moved into the mid-1970s, continuing his demanding schedule of touring in Vegas performances, his hairstyle largely remained in the vein of the established Vegas look, but sometimes with subtle shifts in appearance. This final iteration of his iconic style saw the volume and the sideburns remain prominent, cementing the image that many remember from his last years. The hair generally stayed long, full, and intensely black. The commitment to the dye never wavered. It was fundamental to the Elvis look. The volume might have appeared even greater at times, perhaps due to slight variations in styling or the natural texture of his hair. While still meticulously cared for photos and footage from his final tours, 1976 to 1977, occasionally show the hair looking slightly less rigidly perfect than in the Aloha era, sometimes appearing heavier or a bit looser during performances. However, the overall silhouette, the dark, full mane, and the signature long sideburns remained constant. The sideburns continued to be a key feature, possibly reaching their maximum length and thickness during this period. They were an unwavering part of his visual identity. Maintaining this look undoubtedly continued to require significant effort from his stylist and Elvis himself. Regular dyeing sessions were a must, as were precise cuts and styling before each public appearance or concert. This dedication to maintaining his specific look, even amidst reported health struggles, speaks volumes about how integral it was to his persona and his connection with his audience. This later 70s style is the one seen in the famous footage from his final concert in Indianapolis in June 1977 and in the television special Elvis in Concert, filmed that same month and aired posthumously. While his physical condition had visibly changed, the hair remained a constant, the jet black color, the fullness, the sideburns. It was the visual anchor, the familiar trademark of the king of rock and roll. This final hairstyle represents the endurance of the Elvis image. It was a continuation and solidification of the larger-than-life look he crafted for his comeback and Vegas domination. It might not have been a radical departure from the early 70s, but its consistency in his final years made it the lasting image for many who remember that period. It was the hair of Elvis, the legend, the enduring icon maintained with intensity until the very end. It was the final version of a hairstyle evolution that captivated the world for over 2 decades.